Have you ever wondered what it's like on the other side? I know I have. Today's guest is gratefully alive today and here to tell us about it. This is part one of Host of Lionsgate's Amanda's experience on the other side. Welcome to Soul Spy University, where your souls can run free and your minds are free to expand. It is my hope that today's special two-part series provides as much healing and solace for your soul as it did for me. But first, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. You have no idea how much it means for the content of this channel. It would mean the absolute world to me. And if you get anything out of this at all today, there is a donation link in the description box, which illuminates my soul from the inside out. Any little bit helps me to continue to further create content for your soul expanding and mind freeing world. Don't forget to stay until the end so you could hear all the questions and experiences. And we get even deeper in part two of spiritually transformative experiences, which premieres right after part one. Amanda, I am so delighted that you are alive here today to be with us with this recording. How you doing?
I'm so happy to be with you tonight. Yeah, I'm so happy.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So please start wherever you'd like.
Sure. Okay, so in August of 2017, I was in a car accident that changed my life forever. And what happened was I was in a car with my ex-partner, and we were driving on a high mountain road in Canada. And it was like there was a mountain like this, pretty steep, and the road was kind of hugging the side of the mountain. So if you looked out one side of the car, it went straight up. And if you looked out the other side of the car, it was straight down with just like a concrete guardrail, keeping the cars safe on the road. So we were just coming back from a camping trip and, in a relaxed mood. And suddenly an oncoming car lost control, came in our lane, and approached us head on. And so my partner who was driving, he swerved our car out of the way and towards the gravel shoulder. And it was we had to make quite a jerky move. And once we were on the gravel shoulder, our car lost control and it started spinning. So he kind of overcorrected and came back onto the highway. We did miss that oncoming car, and we continued to spin and hit another oncoming car. So we actually went into their lane and there was a collision. After that, our car flipped upside down and landed with the wheels up on the concrete barrier. So the front end of the car was kind of hanging over the edge of the mountain. And then the back seat was on the roadside. And then the roof was kind of crushed. So we were kind of curled forward in our seats. So those are the facts of what happened that day. For me, I had my own experience. What happened was, well, first of all, I always like to say this part because it gives you kind of a picture of what goes on in that area. I had been working as a paramedic for 13 years in a nearby town. And it was really well known to all of us that accidents happen on this stretch of the highway pretty frequently, and that it's typical for cars to go over the edge. And we would always joke about the paramedics working in this area that they were pretty inexperienced at car accidents because the car would just fly over the edge and you'd never see a survivor. So as soon as our car lost control, immediately I was 100% sure that I was going to die before the accident kind of took its course. So what I did once we hit that gravel shoulder was close my eyes lean back into my seat and relax my muscles as though it was like a plane taking off. You know, there's nothing you can do. You're just clearly now along for the ride. And try and make my body as limp as possible. And I think I don't know why it kicked in to do that. It could have had something to do with my training. You know, we were always told in paramedic training that, you know, drunk people and babies, they survive car accidents the best because they go into them in a completely surrendered, relaxed state. I don't know if that's why I did that, but that was my automatic reaction. Soon as I closed my eyes and just kind of prepared for takeoff, the next thing I experienced was a lack of sound, a lack of anything from my five senses, a darkness, and a complete lightness, a lightness that I've never, ever experienced before. And looking back, I realized that as human beings, we don't notice that we're carrying around a 100, 200-pound plus meat suit all the time. And that actually takes effort. It takes tension of the muscles. It takes energy to do that. But suddenly I was without that. And that experience of being without my body, it wasn't frightening at all. It was incredibly liberating. So suddenly I'm in this totally light way of being, but I'm now actually more aware. I'm in a state that's more real than real life on Earth. And I guess, like, to make another analogy, you know, like if you're out on a Friday night, you've had a few drinks with some friends and you're tired, you're just like a little bit fuzzy. You come home and sleep, wake up, have a glass of water and a coffee, and you're back. You know, it's more real. So there was a quality like that where Earth was as real as I knew, but there's actually something even more real. Once I kind of adjusted that I was in a completely different reality, looking back again, time stopped. Time stopped. And, you know, if you've ever had a dream, a pretty epic dream, a pretty long night of dreams, and then you wake up and it seems like you've been gone forever, but it's actually only been a night, you kind of stepped out of sight of time. Well, this was also like stepping outside of time, but in a pretty big sense, because the accident only, you know, it only lasted a few seconds, but my experience of it was very long, in this place where I ended up. So after the senses kind of turned off, the body was missing, and time slowed down, the next thing that I felt and experienced was what I like to call the presence. I like to call the divine presence. And the best way to explain this next part where I found myself always makes me really happy. It was like being surrounded by feelings, a mood of unconditional love, of welcome, of complete and utter safety, a complete lack of any type of nervousness, awkwardness, anxiety that, you know, most of us carry around to some degree or another. There was this massive familiarity. And when I say the presence, it was like there was someone there that I couldn't see that had the quality of a welcoming, wise, sweet grandfather who, you know, just, you know, sitting in the corner with his tea, perfectly at peace and all-knowing, and wants to hear everything about, you know, where you've been in the last couple of years, where you've traveled, what's happened in your life. He wants you to catch him up. And that he was never worried about you while you were gone. He really believed in you. And he was fascinated to hear everything. And I just kind of get chills while I say that, because I'm kind of going back there in my memory. So I couldn't see a figure that was like an old grandfather, but that's how it felt to kind of be in this presence. So there was no like, oh, am I good enough? Am I being judged? Am I accepted? Am I allowed to be here? That was nowhere in my awareness. Looking back, that's a human thing that only is part of being in the body. And again, I couldn't see any figures. I didn't see any angels or Jesus or anything like that. But this presence seemed to be many. It had the feeling like if I kind of like shifted my awareness to the right, maybe there was some sort of loving being or loving family member. Or if I kind of shift back there, there was another one, but of a different quality, a different uniqueness. But everyone, everything that I could sense around me, even though there were kind of differentnesses, no matter which direction I checked out, everyone was in perfect harmony. Everyone was telepathically connected. Everyone was all knowing. And I had known this presence and the beings that would make up this presence. I'd known them for eons. The most ancient, as far as my awareness could go back, I'd known them and they knew me. And what was so special about this was, again, looking back, was that here on earth, you know, we have people that love us, that we love, that we accept as best as we can, that we think we love unconditionally. But this was a step beyond that. This was like a homecoming. And to experience that level of being known and accepted and being, you know, interested in was such an amazing experience. I don't know how long in, you know, in Earth time, it was probably seconds, but it was like everything paused in the accident, everything paused on Earth. And I was just kind of basking and hovering in this zone. And I like to kind of call it maybe the threshold of what's beyond. So again, like I didn't have any direct conversations with any of the beings there. I didn't start to see any images or anything like that. But it was as much as I could kind of like handle and take in. It was so plenty. It was just so over the top. And I know that there was more than just kind of connecting and re-merging with that presence, that ancient family. But when I came out of the car accident, I didn't remember much more than what I'm telling you now. However, I had this sense after the accident that there was more experiences beyond, but they had been blocked from my memory somehow. And a couple of them did pop up later in the years to come. Suddenly, I open my eyes. I'm back in my body. There's lots of noise. My senses are all back, and my partner and I are upside down in our car, and we're looking at upside down trees going like straight downhill. And the car hadn't stopped moving, so there was like, we didn't know if it was going to even like continue over. The accident didn't feel quite done until we were out of that car. So it was really hovering. There was like clanging of like, we'd gone camping, so we had camping equipment and like iron pots, and they were just like bouncing and banging off rocks going down. There was people yelling. We heard people saying, "Oh, I don't want to go look at a dead body. You go look first," kind of thing. And I was totally blissed out. You know, I'm hanging there upside down. I'm super calm. I had just been home, to a home I didn't even know I had. A place that I probably had longings for, but couldn't picture in my head. You know, sometimes we're here on earth and we feel like we just want to go home. Well, there is a place like that. So I had just been there and I was totally blissed out, not worried about this accident whatsoever. And just kind of like, you know, waited for someone to come and help us out. My partner was screaming, you know, he was not in a good place. So that's kind of like most of the noise that I could hear. They let us out of the car. You know, we were waiting for emergency services to come. I just remember sitting on the edge, sitting on that concrete barrier and just like looking over the edge of the trees and just being in the most calm, peaceful, beautiful wavelength, beautiful essence that I've ever felt in my entire life. And, you know, some of the people, they worried that I was in shock, that that I had a head injury, just the way that I was probably behaving, because, you know, how could they ever know? So that's what happened the day of the car accident.
God, I was so in that with you. I got to find my questions. I'm probably going to ask them all sorts of out of order, but I think I'm just going to go with whatever I'm feeling, which is so I got hit by a car once, and I can relate to you on so many different levels that throughout the two videos people will see. But I wish I had that experience. But what I do remember is, and I'm starting to wonder because my last guest said you did have an experience, Christina, but it was blocked from you.
Okay.
So I'm like, it's so interesting that you said that there was more that was blocked from you, right? And that later it comes out. So about that, I got hit by a car, and I remember a couple of things that I have in common with you and with him. And what it was is when I kind of I woke up for a second, and I saw people like running towards me, and I was like, I'm so sorry. Like I was trying to say, I'm sorry. I, like I'm so sorry. I'm okay. I'm okay. And I was trying to get up from the sidewalk, like trying to say that. And then of course I must have collapsed because I was not conscious and I shouldn't have been. You know what I mean? And then the next thing I remember is waking up in the stretcher with so long story short, I my parents had passed prior, and I was now in the custody of an aunt in a different state who happened to be the vice principal of the school I went to, Newtown Middle School, and Sandy Hook kind of thing. And I became very close with the secretary. I may have not been my aunt's favorite person because no matter what I did, it wasn't good enough, that kind of thing. But her secretary, I was very close with. She knew something happened to me because I was walking to the orthodontist on the last day of school, 7th grade, and she heard sirens go by, and she just knew. She just ran out. She just knew. So the next thing I know, I wake up on a stretcher and I see her over me, and I just felt like so much love, like for her and from her. I was in that frequency of I just remember feeling like, oh, look how much she cares, and like look at that love in her eyes. I feel bad for her, because she looks sad and trying to say like it's gonna be okay, but you could tell she didn't know, you know what I mean? And I was just all about like her feelings, and then of course I passed out again because I shouldn't have been alive. And then one of the next things I know, and so my last guest that was on mentioned that when he came back from his near death experience, where he was literally dead for I think like hours, he woke up but they resuscitated him. And they kept trying, so something where he was in a coma for a while, and when he came back into his body, he had this experience where he ripped off all. He just was claustrophobic. I mean, he had a great near death experience, but he ripped off all the wires from him, the catheter. He just was ready to leave the hospital, So I had a similar thing happen. I woke up and I started ripping apart everything, trying to be free and singing. I was trying to sing because that has always been my locked up lifelong thing that was always too private for me, So all of a sudden I'm like coming back into consciousness. So I'm like, la, la, la. And I'm just like ripping apart all these things off me. Like, I don't need this, you know? So yeah. And then, so yeah, I'm starting to wonder if I did have an NDE. He's saying I did, and that at the time I wasn't ready for it. Now, that I needed it the most to know at that time. It was the hardest time in my life. That car accident was the least of my problems, and I had to have brain surgery. You know what I mean? So, but maybe on some subconscious level, I must have known or remembered something because how else did I get through? Like if I told you what I had to go through after that and before that, it's like, how did I get through it? And I can't help but wonder, maybe I did visit home, you know, on some level. And I'm going to relate to you on other things later that are just, really spiritual transforming experiences like you have that I think later come into your story as well. Do you now, if you don't know this, it's okay, but do you think people that have passed on can um like see us? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Um, I think this is like I definitely, the answer is yes. I do think that from what I've experienced myself, it can be a hard topic to think of linearly, but I'm going to do my best with, kind of what I've seen and experienced. In the Tibetan tradition, and also in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, it talks about the soul leaving the body, and not necessarily in the same order, but visiting different realms of reality. So in no order, there is like a life review. And this is not a judgment. This is literally a life review. Okay, this went well. I might want to try this again, this kind of thing, where you are supported. There is a realm where there is a reconnection with loved ones, deceased ancestors. There are high levels, they call them bardos. There are high bardos where it's just very heavenly, like when you think about angels and all these celestial kind of things. And then there are other places to pass through that are more like a purification. And I think that the church system, the organized religion, has elements of it correct, but they've twisted them to frighten people. And so there is a passing through some of these difficult realms where we see things that we didn't want to face in life, resentments, fears, things we've numbed ourselves about. And in those difficult realms, there is a purification where we actually do face them. We don't really have a choice, which is really why I promote and believe in shadow work and purification. So when the soul has left the body, they could be busy in one of these realms, taking care of business. But because outside of the body, we're outside of time, and things are kind of happening at the same time, if that makes sense. There could be, your deceased grandmother could be, a part of her could be experiencing one of these bardo realms, but at the same time, the version of her after her purification bardo is the version of her that is present and watching, her granddaughter and showing up for her granddaughter. So yes, again, the answer is yes. And that because it's so non-linear, after we're out of the body, they might be kind of more focused on one thing or the other, but in general, yes.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, because time is so different here than it is over there, I wonder if it's hard for them to sort of reach us at different points, you know?
Definitely, that's a great point. So I'm very connected with my deceased grandmother, and she was 16 when I died. We were very close in life, but I had no connection with her at all after she died. There was no dreams, no signs, nothing. And then after my near-death experience, some very interesting things started to happen. I would be in the middle of nowhere, like without any human beings, and I would get strong whiffs of her very distinct perfume.
Mm.
She was kind of like one of these luxurious ladies who had like a lot of different perfumes. And so over the course of my life, it's almost like someone sprayed it right in front of me, different ones that she used to wear that I forgot even existed until this came. Other times I'll be looking at photographs of her that I'd never even seen, and I'll realize that I'm wearing almost identical clothing as she was wearing in the picture, and I never even had seen the picture. And so, yes, they're kind of around us. That's one way of looking at it, and that's one way that some psychics and mediums can kind of like notice them. But they're really living inside of us, and when we kind of see them on the outside of us, it's just a projection. So I really believe that they are there, and that when our vibration is higher and we're in a lighter state, it's much easier for them to both connect with us and to, if they're healthy and well, to express themselves through us as well, to comfort us, to visit us in dreams, that kind of thing.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, let me see my questions. Do you believe people have a soul mission?
A soul mission. Yeah. I believe that most of us have come here with a soul mission. And that sometimes, or for most of the time, unless someone's like really in alignment and pretty focused, they're not going to just suddenly know what it is. I believe that a soul mission or purpose is something that reveals itself to us, and that we can have many. Like sometimes, you've got really strong gifts, and there's something that you're able to give and give over and over again really well throughout your life. And that's one of your soul missions. I also do believe that we have potential for really big soul missions. However, in order to really get to that, there is a lot of internal work that needs to be done first, because all of us, based on our past lives and junk that happens in our early life, collect a lot of debris, energetic garbage around our energy centers. And it's really difficult for a person to really jump in and embody their soul purpose when they're carrying around all that debris. They're not going to be very effective. So that's why you often see, in my opinion, that's why you often see people who have massive changes, big shakeups in their life, and who struggle and go through a lot. But when they're finished with the major parts of those purifications, they do really start to step into a big soul purpose.
That's amazing. So we have 10 minutes till we get kicked off. I wanted to ask you, I love this next chapter, guys, and if it gets interrupted, it continues in part 2, premiering right after this. But I love how you speak on, and if you want to elaborate more on this, how your life has changed. How has your life changed since this near-death experience?
Yeah, great question. So I was 35 when this happened. I had a pretty typical Western life. Lived in British Columbia, Canada. I'd been with the same partner for 13 years. I was working. I just pretty general routine. I was, healthy person. Did my best at work. And then, so nothing wrong with my life. Pretty blessed. After this car accident, my partner, he got a concussion in that accident, as well as he was pretty traumatized in general. And this brought up a lot of his old trauma, part of which it was a violent side of him. And so I was suddenly experiencing a lot of domestic violence at home. So the first thing that ended up having to change was me getting up and leaving him. I had experienced violence from him in the past, so it wasn't like complete change. It was just like very sudden and very constant. But what was different after the accident was I didn't even think twice about leaving. Like before, I would kind of make excuses. Well, this hardly ever happens. We've been together for a long time. Let's make this work. This time it was like, well, this isn't working for me. I'm leaving. And it was so sudden that I did that and involved the police that he was completely shocked, because he was kind of used to like the other times, right? And it wasn't even difficult. It was like I had this force inside of me. It was strong but gentle, and it just knew what to do without even getting emotional. I didn't feel victim-like. I didn't feel frightened. It was just like, get up, drive to the police station, bring the police home, have him leave, call in for counseling. It was almost like business as usual, which is like not normal for me. I'm, a normal person. So that happened. After a few more months, being inside this, medium-sized house and taking care of that myself, I was thinking, this isn't for me anymore. This was our home. I don't want to take care of all this myself. This is annoying. So I put the house up for sale. It sold pretty quickly. I actually made a vision board. I was 35 and it was January. And the vision board said, I want to sell my house by the time I'm 36, which was May, 5 months later. And I closed the deal 3 days after my birthday. So I sold the house, and then I gave and sold most of my belongings. I got a storage locker for some of the more like important things, like my skis and some art and some photo albums and stuff. I took my two big dogs and I bought a camper van, and I moved into that camper van, and I had some money from the settlement from the car accident also. So I quit my job as a paramedic. You know, I'd been there for 12 or 13 years at this point, and I just went into the wilderness. Like it was summer. I went to the forest, and you know, BC is full of forests and lakes. You could do it forever. And me and the two dogs basically lived in the forest for almost 2 years. So during that time, it was a lot of meditation, a lot of making art, a lot of hiking, visiting friends I hadn't seen in a long time. It was quite amazing, you know, swimming in lakes under like the full moon by myself with my dogs. It was just like out of a fairy tale. So it was quite blissful. I got really involved in ayahuasca ceremonies on and off for about 3 years. Yeah, for definitely those 2 years in the van, which helped me to put a lot of pieces together about my early life and trauma that I had blocked out. And then basically the lockdowns started up, and I was in my van, and it wasn't so comfortable. So people didn't want me to come visit where I would, you know, wash my clothes and have a shower. The gyms were closed, the pools were closed. I was suddenly like a little bit not so comfortable. And I had become pretty energetically sensitive. So even though I wasn't worried about getting sick myself, I could feel this real heavy density kind of descend upon society in general. And I started to miss that bliss started to fizzle away. So I was like, okay, what to do? Took my dogs to a friend's where they stayed. They ended up staying long term. And I emptied out my storage locker pretty quick, sold everything that was left, sold my camper van. I moved to Mexico, and I spent the next 6 months in Mexico in kind of between a little bit of time in San Cristobal and a little bit of time in Bacalar, while I thought, okay, what to do now? What to do next? And then after about 6 months, I was staying in a Airbnb or something, and there was some other people there, and they were making some jokes about there was a president in the country of Tanzania in East Africa who was doing tests on papayas, and they were coming back positive for, you know. And so I thought, wow, well, they're probably not too locked down there either. Maybe I'll just go there. So I had hardly any money left. I'd spent most of my savings. I bought a plane ticket one way to Tanzania, East Africa. And I bought my ticket the night those guys were talking about the president, actually. And I started volunteering and staying in a village, which is about 10 hours west of the capital city. I planned to only go there for a month until I decided what I was going to do next. But one thing led to another, and they had just been gifted some land. It was a small rural school, and they were looking for English teachers. They kind of cater to really low income children, HIV positive families, just, yeah, not so well kids. So they'd just been given some land, and I said, okay, well, let's run a fundraiser. Let's run a GoFundMe and see what happens. And so my friend in Canada and I set that up within the first month, and we ended up raising almost 1/3 of the amount that would build a full primary school. And they're operating their kindergarten out of a little house. So I ended up staying longer to kind of oversee the spending of the money, and it continues to grow to this day. This is why I still live here in Africa, so I'm still connected with them. And yeah, life has really picked up and not slowed down since.
Oh my God, that's amazing. It's so weird that I reached out when I did, because when I reached out, I was in the middle of investigating how to live off the grid in the forest.
You can come here. You're welcome.
And now I'm meeting a woman who has, and I've been very, very, very much this urge inside me to get rid of my stuff, to sell it, and like as soon as possible. And you know, we'll talk after the next recording. It's more about, I don't know if it's from my situation or if it's something else, but okay, guys, we only have 2 minutes left, so I don't want to interrupt her. So in this next part, I'm going to ask her all sorts of things regarding what I just asked. And wait until you see. It's going to be chock full of spiritually transformative experiences, more from amazing Amanda, and I'm going to tell you, it's going to be conversations you've never heard before. Definitely not in the elevator. So I hope to see you guys there really soon. Part 2 starts right now.